With the scrapping of the 77-year-old lake freighter Mississauga, some folks remarked that she had a long career. Indeed, that is true. But it pales in comparison to this grand old lady of the lakes. The E.M. Ford. In 1897, plans were laid out for a new ore carrier to be launched the following year. She would be owned by the Presque Isle Transportation Company and measure 428 feet in length, 50 feet in beam, and 28 feet in depth. Launched on Wednesday, May 25, 1898, the new ore boat was christened Presque Isle and was painted in the green and black colors of her chartering company, Cleveland Cliffs. The new boat could carry 6,200 tons of ore at her summer load lines. She ran in her original configuration for the next 15 years, but an innovation that first appeared in 1904 had the potential to increase her capacity and efficiency. That was the year that the Augustus B. Wolven came out. Prior to her, every ore boat had holds that were obstructed by stanchions used to support the upper deck. The Wolven, however, had arches, which left her hold wide open and not only allowed for more cargo, but also didn't obstruct the unloading equipment. At the end of the 1914 season, the Presque Isle's holds were reconstructed. She was given arches in her hold, and at the same time her Victorian-era pilot house and Texas deck were moved onto her forecastle. With the opening of the 1915 season, she left the Ashtabula shipyard as a nearly new boat. She ran the iron ore and coal routes until 1955. But by then, vessels were being planned that would soon kiss the 730-foot mark, and little 400-footers, such as the Presque Isle, would be headed for the scrapyard. Cleveland Cliffs elected to put her up for sale at the end of the 1955 season. The Huron-Portland Cement Company found her to be the perfect size for their powdered cement carrying business. Since their cement business didn't compete with the Cliffs iron ore trade, the Cliffs Company readily sold the Presque Isle. Christie Corporation in Sturgeon Bay did the conversion, turning the former iron ore carrier into a self-unloading cement carrier. Her hatches were welded shut, and each hatch was topped with 4 round hatches for loading the powdered cement. In later years, a 5th small hatch would be added to each. In the spring of 1956, the new carrier, monikered E.M. Ford, was towed to Detroit and readied for her sea trials on Lake Huron. On the way to her sea trials, the new boat was upbound, entering the St. Clair River in ballast. It was the final hours of April 19, 1956, and she was just above Harson's Island when her steering equipment failed. Coming downbound with a full load of stone was the Reese self-unloader A.M. Byers. The pair collided nearly head-on, 600 feet south of Russell Island and 200 yards offshore, with the Byers sinking up to her deck. The E.M. Ford, however, remained afloat. She was taken to the Great Lakes Engineering Works and given a new bow. Meanwhile, it took until May 19th before the Byers was raised and taken in for repairs. She would later return to service, and her career would last until 1974. Finally, on the 24th of July, 1956, the new self-unloading cement carrier with her green hull and huge white billboard lettering reading Huron Cement, painted on her beams, was at the Boblo dock on the Detroit River awaiting her christening. A huge crowd had gathered, and out on the Detroit River was the Huron Cement steamer St. Crapo, which held another group of guests. The new steamer had been named after the current Huron chairman of the board of Huron Portland Cement Company, Emery M. Ford. Waiting to christen the boat was Laura Ford, the 10-year-old daughter of the boat's namesake. Flanked by her father, Miss Ford swung the champagne bottle and smashed it against the bow. Indeed, the new boat was off to a good start and a great career. Over the years, the Ford would go through a number of rebuilds that would expand both her aft and forward cabins. Then on Christmas Eve, 1979, a violent storm would hit Lake Michigan. It found the Ford lying at the outer harbor dock at Milwaukee. The boat had arrived on December 22nd and was supposed to wait for her fleet mate, the St. Crapo, but that boat was delayed in Alpena. Considering the closeness of the Christmas holiday, the Ford's crew were given leave, and all but 5 went home for the holiday. The storm was so strong that the winds and waves in the harbor broke the Ford free of her mooring lines and began to smash her against the dock. Her 5 remaining crewmen were powerless to restore those lines. After several hours, she was in a sinking condition and flooded with a load of 5,850 tons of powdered cement aboard. Her crewmen were unharmed, as she sank only to the bottom of the slip and flooded only as high as her spar deck. Amazingly, Huron Cement Management decided to salvage the boat and put her back into service. Workers had to chip through a 3-foot thick shell of hardened cement and remove the chunks before her powdered cargo could be removed itself. It took more than 216 tons of new hull plating to fully repair the 8-decade-old steamer. She was rededicated and put back into service on August 7, 1980, and remained fairly busy through the economic recession of the 80s. The 1990s, however, saw Huron cement bought by Inland Lakes Transportation, and so the words Huron Cement were painted over on the vessels, including the Ford. Soon ILT contracted to build an ultra-efficient self-unloading cement barge, and that spelled the end of sailing days for the EM Ford. She was laid up as a transfer and storage hull at the company's 6th Street plant in Carlton, Michigan, on the Saginaw River. She celebrated her 100th birthday there, and only a few boat nerds who knew her history were there to celebrate with the grand old lady of the lakes. On November 10th, 2008, the EM Ford was towed away from her retirement home at 6th Street and headed for the scrapyard. She was 109 years old. She still had her historic quadruple expansion steam engine, and it was in its prime condition as the tugs took her away. That engine was not preserved. In 1986, I was invited aboard the Ford and allowed to freely roam around with my camera. Those images will be in my upcoming video, Aboard the EM Ford. Look for it.